Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with beef tenderloin medallions with caramelized tomato and mushroom pan sauce. So I'm not really sure if this is an Italian recipe, but it is inspired by those types of flavors. But what I am sure about, it was really fast to make, super easy, and really delicious. Okay, to start, we're going to prep our second most important ingredient, the beef tenderloin. It should be fully trimmed and ready to cook. All right, those are 4 ounces each, so I'm giving each person 2 4-ounce medallions. But the portion size is really between you and your butcher. So we're going to season that generously on both sides with salt and freshly ground black pepper, and that is prepped. Okay, that was the second most important ingredient. Now on to the most important ingredient, a high-quality, heavy-duty stainless steel pan. And you're going to see why that's such a big deal in just a minute. So I'm going to put in a few drops of grapeseed oil. Any kind of neutral, high heat oil is perfect. This is on the highest flame I have. And here's a little trick I like. Take a little piece of scrap trimming, some fat, and just rub that all over the bottom. It's a nice way to grease the pan, and it looks like, a really foodie thing to do. Okay, when the oil starts to smoke, yes, it has to be that hot. You're going to toss in your beef medallions, and we're going to sear those for just 2 minutes per side. Okay, this gets finished cooking in the sauce gently at the end. So I'm just trying to get a nice little brown crust on there. And again, that's going to happen pretty quickly. So this was just 2 minutes per side. Once that was seared, I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to remove the beef to a plate. I'm going to add a chunk of butter and some olive oil to my pan. And then we're going to start the first of 2 very important caramelizations. The first, we're going to toss in a handful of mushrooms with a pinch of salt. Now, mushrooms are mostly water, so that salt's going to pull out the moisture. It's going to start to deglaze those meat juices on the bottom of the pan that we got from searing the meat. And at that point, I want you to turn your heat up to medium, and we're just going to cook those mushrooms until well browned. So what's happened here, those mushrooms have given up their water. They've soaked up that caramelized goodness, those brown bits from the pan, and we're just going to caramelize all that together to build the base of this sauce. And I'm going to guess and say that's going to take you about 10 minutes. You can even raise the heat up past medium to medium high if you want to go a little quicker, but you do want to brown them at least until they look like this, okay? You can even go farther if you want. At that point, we're going to dump in some tomato product. Any tomato sauce basically will work. All right, mine had a little bit of garlic and basil in it. And this is the second caramelization. And we're going to cook the tomato with the mushroom until that tomato just starts to brown onto the mushrooms. And again, this is why you can't really do this in a cheap, thin pan, because you'll have hot spots. And there'll be spots that are singeing and burning, while the areas around it will be not caramelizing. So a really thick bottom pan is important, because all this will brown and caramelize at the same rate. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that's going to take about 5 to 6 minutes to do that. All right? So you don't want it to burn, but a deep kind of brick red brown is good. You're developing lots of tangy flavor that's going to balance perfectly with the next ingredient, which is some wine. Some Marsala wine, which is an Italian wine. It's a little on the sweet side, very delicious. You know we've used that in several recipes before. So we're going to pour in a little bit. I'm going to raise my heat up to high. And once it's almost all evaporated and looks like that, we're going to dump in our stock. Now, if you have veal stock, you are one lucky you-know-what. But if you don't, chicken broth works great. I know it sounds weird, but beef broth doesn't seem to work as well as chicken. So that goes in. And then to finish this recipe, very, very simple. We're going to simply reduce this by about half. You can put the heat up as high as you want. I'm going to taste for seasoning, a little salt and pepper. All right, so that's looking good. That's tasting good. And at that point, we're going to introduce the meat back in, but very critical. Turn your heat down to low. All right, we just want to heat this meat through. We want to finish cooking it. Remember, we only gave it 2 minutes per side, so it's still rare inside. So we're just going to keep this on low, keep tossing it in that hot sauce, and in probably 4 or 5 minutes, you should have a perfect medium rare. Now, of course, you're going to cook it how you like it. I think this dish has to be served with the meat pink. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying every other way is wrong. Okay? Once I determined my meat was complete and ready to eat, I removed it from the pan, put it on hot plates, and then to finish our sauce, you know the drill. Turn off the heat, throw in a little chunk of butter. If you got fresh herbs, use them. I'm using a little bit of fresh oregano. Fresh parsley would have been great in this. Give that a stir, keep it moving. When the butter melts, you spoon it over the meat, and let me tell you, this sauce is just out of this world. Of course, buttery beef tenderloin is always going to be delicious, but when you combine it with this amazing sauce, you are talking to die for. Like borderline literally. And did it taste as good as it looked? Better. Let me cut into this. Just amazing. You have that sweetness with the marsala playing off that tart caramelized tomato. And of course, those savory, earthy mushrooms. Just a spectacular combination and incredibly simple. All right, start to finish, that was about a 20-minute recipe. Just heaven on a plate. I love this kind of food. Fast, hearty, delicious, and yet still fairly light. It's not a heavy dish. There's no roux, there's no cornstarch, there's just a touch of butter in the sauce. So really overall, a spectacular dish. I hope you give it a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.